we can't just say, oh, if you're good at football and basketball, or
Hmm.
if you're a good rapper, then that's you're going to be good. It's just not enough of those types of opportunities for the young men who are of color, and we need to show them that you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be a business owner, you can do all those things, and we just need to show them the way.
What was the inspiration for the book?
The inspiration for me came in our area here, and I live in Norfolk, Virginia, and there's a lot of youth, and you see it on the news every day, right?
Yep.
Especially black youth. You see them, they either shot somebody, either they got shot, they were arrested. And I had my son also. I raised my son. I was a single father for the most part.
Okay. Very
And,
good.
I raised, and we were lower income, lower middle class household, right? And he went to school, and he, in the neighborhood were a lot of other young men, and some of them, a lot of them actually didn't have fathers, right? So I was able to, befriend them and kind of be a mentor to some of them. And at the age of about 12 or 13, um, teenagers tend to go one direction or another. And the same thing happened for me. The same thing happened for him. And so what I told myself, and my inspiration for writing the book, is I said, what would I tell my younger self, and what would I also explain to my son, just about things that I've learned along the way, things about relationships, getting married, being a father, um, some of the things that I had to learn the hard way through just trial and error, um, budgeting your household, being the man of the house, um, learning how to invest, and then also just navigating the world from a black male's perspective is something that I wanted to not only share with him, but I said, I could share this message with so many other young men who could benefit from it.
Okay. And the title of the book is To My Son with Love.
Yes, that's the
How
title
old
of the
is he?
book. Yep. He's 24 now.
And what does he think of the book?
So his standpoint is like, well, Dad, you that stuff. So, but he definitely is supportive. But he feels very, very strongly that, yeah, these are the same things, some of the same things that you taught me. And, some of the things in there are like, yeah, Dad, I get it. And, what I mean by that is, so he joined the Air Force,
Okay.
and he got married. Yeah, he got married probably a little bit sooner than I would advise him, but at the same time, he has he has a career going, and he's a firefighter in the Air Force, so he's solid when it comes to taking care of his family. But again, if I had, and one of the messages in my book is, hey, wait until you get married. But that's probably the one bone of contention that we have. But nevertheless, I'm still extremely proud of him.
Okay. You mentioned a few that I want to break down and get into the lessons that you learned growing up that you
Yes,
wanted to pass on to not just your son, but other young males out there to
yes,
try and give them a jump start on having a better life as a black male in America. All right.
yes.
Okay. You talk about a vision for the community
Yeah,
or a vision of the community.
yeah.
Explain to me what that means to you.
So I see that a lot of the young males and young men, even that I grew up with, or that you see in the community, and one of the phrases that I always use, and me and my wife both use, is that you don't know what you don't know, right? A
Yes,
lot of times we
very
can
much
only
so.
see what's around us in our environment, and the mindset is so, in a way, stuck. and that we can't see any further out than what's right here in our face. And I think the vision, right, is to expose these young men because, if you look at the difference between a young man who decides to get involved in selling drugs, and some of them say they do it for their family or they do it just to earn money or whatever, they got to get money, and then you get to that point where you're going down a path that there is no coming back in most cases, right? But they feel like those are their only choices because either they've dropped out of high school, and what I say, something that I say in my book, is when you make that decision to sell drugs, to join a gang, to do all those things
Mm-hmm.
that will lead you to either prison or being dead, you've already made that decision many decisions ago, right? So you've made the decision not to study. You made the decision not to have a and those are those things also have an effect because the people around you have not created that for you. So it's not the kid's fault. It's not necessarily that young man's fault that they are going down that path. Is
Okay.
that I don't think more opportunities have been presented to them in order to allow them to make better choices, right? So that's the key ingredient for me in making sure that we have better opportunities is to thrust those things in front of them in school, after school programs. We can't just say, oh, if you're good at football and basketball, or
Hmm.
if you're a good rapper, then that's you're going to be good. It's just not enough of those types of opportunities for the young men who are of color, and we need to show them that you can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be a business owner, you can do all those things, and we just need to show them the way.
Yeah, because the perception is that legally, if you're an African American, the only way you can make it, quote unquote, make it, is by running, jumping, singing, or dancing for a living.
Bertram, yeah,
So without that super talent, it seems the perception, the only other opportunity is to do it the illegal way.
right,
But we have Andre
right,
standing in the space saying that's not true.
absolutely, absolutely, and just to go further with that, and I spent the last 10 years working for a Fortune 200 company. I was in management. Before that, I was in management. I was in the United States Army. So I've seen it all, right? I've seen
Okay.
where, and like some of my friends who were buddies of mine in the Army, we all came from very similar backgrounds, not really having a father in the house. And we all bonded over those same issues. And so I've seen it happen, right? We just need it to happen more. But again, when you get locked in your mind that this is your path, and then you get to your first arrest and you realize, oh, jail is not that bad, or the detention center, juvenile detention center, oh, it's not that bad, and then you become okay with not raising your standards higher. You're okay with just being status quo.
Why do you feel that it's important for young men to learn these lessons? Why should there be somebody in the community that stands in the gap to teach these lessons? Because a lot of us grew up with that saying, what happens in this house stays in this house. So you're not supposed to really know who else out there is having any type of turmoil in their life or in their home. So what presses you, right? Because to step out there and
It,
write a book and start speaking on it is more than just having an idea.
mhm.
What is fueling you to get this done?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. So um, it's very taboo, especially for Black people, to talk about, just as you said, what happened in our house, and that happened because of slavery, right? There was when our ancestors were freed, right? They were told not to talk about the pain that they had gone through. Don't talk about it. We want to try to forget it, right? So they didn't pass those stories down from generation to generation. And then that became, I think, a habit of we keep things here. You don't talk about your pain. You don't talk about, and I actually caught some flack for some of the things that I say. And I didn't point the finger at anybody as I was growing up. But again, as I say in the book, and the title of the book is Overcoming Adversity and Obstacles.
Okay.
And I definitely had to overcome a lot of things, even, in my childhood and even in my adult life, that you just don't figure happening, but they happen to you. And we need more people coaching, leading young men, and advising them that there are more options for you. And so the reason that it's so important for me, and what makes me so passionate, is that I know I have a message inside me that I'm just dying to get out.
Okay.
I know that people could benefit from it. And again, I just think that if and you're exposed to more, then we can do more in the community.
When you say you caught flack for it, was it in the community with, as you say, other people's children, or was it somebody closer to you?
Yeah, it was someone closer to me. Um, when you say, so I say in my book that I was abused, right? And you never you should, why would you say that? Why are you saying things? And then some of the other things that
Okay.
I talk about, growing up in poverty and having to go through certain things that I went through. And my point in doing it was to say, you can focus on what you want your life to be instead of what your life is currently,
All right.
right? So if you shift your mindset into, where do I want to go, not where am I at this moment. And that's kind of the things that got me through those things of pain, is that, okay, where do I want to go? I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be like, oh, that's what I want to be like. I want to be like my uncle and his son. I want to be like, Bill Cosby. And I know that's not supposed to talk about, but that was the example that we had when I was
Right,
growing up.
right, right.
That's how I wanted my family to be, despite how my family may have been at that moment or growing up. So, but, and I've heard some other people say the same thing who have written books, that their family may not have been pleased with some of the things that were said. And I try my best to look at it and say, okay, I want to make sure that I don't offend anyone, right? But you still have to tell your story, right? You still have to tell your version of it and try to walk that tightrope, that fine line of saying, I want to get my truth out there because I know it can help people.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
So,
I don't know how it makes
yeah.
you feel, but it's a blessing when, like, people will stop me and they'll whisper in my ear, they'll say it really close to me, like, I read your book, and because of your book, I've changed my life in this manner. And that is, because it's why you write the book in the first place. But let's hop into some of
And
the lessons. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
okay, I was going to say, and that's what I'm hoping for. I'm still in the infancy stages and still trying to ramp everything up, but I'm hoping, and I've heard that feedback um, thus far from some of the folks who have read it, but that's awesome. And that gives me inspiration to keep forging on.
Yeah, because we have to, as a people, we have to stop being embarrassed by our pain, because that which we hide continues to fester, and it eats
Yes.
away at the entire family, not just the person that is carrying the pain, because they don't see how they're acting out, and that acting out is just destroying the family relationship.
Right.
But let's get into some
Right.
of the lessons that you feel these young men need to learn. Like you mentioned budgeting.
Yeah.
Now, with everybody
Say that,
out
say
there
that
wanting
again.
to, I said, you mentioned, let's get into some of the lessons that you actually want these young men to learn and apply to their lives as they get older. All right. So
Mm-hmm.
why would a young male say, tell me why a teenager would need to know about budgeting?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing is planning a foundation. And number one, we're not normally taught that in our households. And I have a background as a banker and talking with people, opening up bank accounts, and you see the mistakes. I mean, I've done so many things, but you see people making mistakes as far as knowing how to save money. And people think that, oh, I'm not making that much money, so I can't save that much money. But it's really about how much money you keep as opposed to how much money you make. And it's about percentages, right? So if you're making $100, save $10. If you're making $1,000, save $100. And if you get into the habit of doing that, especially as you mentioned, if you do that early, then by the time that you in your 20s and in your 30s, the hope is that you've developed some really good habits about saving, and that what and we're not just saving just to save, right? You're saving with the purpose of doing something greater with the money that you save. If you want to start your business, if you want to just buy a house, if you want to buy an investment property, that's what the money is for.
Okay.
It's for when you start having children, you're better prepared to take care of those children and your family. And again, it's about being able to save and invest, and not only just for the purpose of that, is because that's gonna that's going to improve not just your family, but then you'll be able to put your family in a better position to succeed when they go off into the world, because maybe you can help them. But if if you have a habit of only spending, if you earn $50,000, you're spending 49,999, right? What it's hard to do is you get that car, you get that nice car, you get that really nice house, and then you stretch yourself to the point where it's paycheck to paycheck. And that's because a lot of the times that's what we've been taught to do, and that's what society also tells us to do. We have egos, right? I remember selling when you selling people a car, right?
Mm-hmm.
You say you might instruct them or advise them and say, hey man, ma'am, or sir, this car is $200 a month, and it really fits your budget. No, I want that car. That's $400 a month, and I can afford it, and I'll work overtime, and I'll do whatever I got to do because I want that car. And that's just the mindset that we have. But there are different ways of doing things. Like, I haven't had a car payment since 2006.
Whoa.
And I was struggling. I mean, I don't have the nicest cars, and but I haven't had a car payment since 2006. And the thing that I learned is that you can save up and just buy a car, and that car's really, the purpose is to get you from point A to point B, right? How I look and how I look in the car, you want to make sure the car is functional, but you're better able to maintain the car if you have the money, that if you need to do something to it. Now there are different
Now,
there
now, now, is Mr. Council driving the hoopty in the neighborhood? Is he smoking up the neighborhood?
um it's not a hoopty. It's an older model BMW that I bought from a little old lady with about 90,000 miles on it. And I have an old pickup truck that I take the lows and put some stuff in there, do some things around the house, put some
Mm-hmm.
mulch in there, and just bring it back here. That's like a 2004, low miles. So in
Okay.
my mind,
Okay.
in my not a hoopty.
So it's enough for, say, the young teens out there to relate to say, okay, at least he's not driving a Buick. All right.
Right,
He's
right, 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 right.
now I'm gonna get you in trouble now.
Uh-oh.
Because
I'm ready.
you said to help young men be the man of the home.
Hmm.
But in 2022, those traditional home roles are disappearing fastly in the
Absolutely.
rearview mirror.
Absolutely.
So in 2022, with
Yes.
the options and the disappearance of the roles, how do you prepare a young man today for the future?
That's a great point. And the only reason why I phrase it that way is because my message is to young men. And I think that even so, I talk about this in my book too, and I specify. I say, even if your significant other, your spouse,
Mm-hmm.
is making more money than you, even if the roles, I said it's always a partnership. It's 50-50,
Okay.
right? But I believe that men are expected to lead. And I may be wrong about that, but that's just based on my experience, is that men, no matter what the roles are and how much money you may be making,
Mm-hmm.
I think the expectation of a man is to be a man and I be a provider to, even though you may not be making the most money, we want to make sure that the lights stay on. It's my job to make sure that my kids get taken care of. It's my job. I take that upon myself
Okay.
and not leave anybody else. So that's what I mean. We do it together, but at the end of the day, it's on my shoulders
Okay.
to
So
take care
so for the
of my
young
family.
so the young men right now that see that as their future, this is the lesson for them to learn to apply later on.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so I would say that it's a partnership, right? And so the woman that you marry or whomever you may marry, right? They're going to be different. They're going to be taught a different way. You're going to be taught a different way. And you're right. The future is moving to the point where the roles may be completely reversed. I don't know. Um,
It depends on the household.
it depends on the household and depends on the two people as well. Because if you have a young lady who may have had a strong father figure in her life, then maybe her perspective will be different than a young lady who may not have had a strong father figure in her life. And they may be dependent upon, or they may be more independent minded to say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do this. And I think it's up to the spouse or the young man to say, okay, well, I agree with you, but let's look at something. Let's look at it a little different, you know. Um, but yeah, who knows what the future might.
Okay. So for takeaways
Yes.
from the interview, I have three lessons that young men should know that they can learn from you and from your book. One is budgeting early,
Mm-hmm.
because if they start budgeting in their teens, the more time they have to apply and then reapply from lessons learned, because they're going to make mistakes. Because just like our elders might have told us, save, 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 they didn't tell us how to save in inflation.
Right.
So while you're saving, your money is disappearing, but you also need to mix that with some investing. All right.
Yeah.
So they're gonna make mistakes, but the earlier they apply, the earlier they have time to reapply those lessons learned, and then investing and being a
Mm-hmm.
part of the vision for the community. But before I end, I want to ask you
Yep.
one question, because you did say you haven't had a car payment since 2006.
Yes.
So break down a lesson and give us the recipe for not ever having a car payment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I drove the car that I had was a 2000 Nissan Maxima, and so I'm pretty good with cars. I don't like to work on cars, but I was okay with working on cars. and I know a little bit about cars. So it's a little bit different for me in that if something's wrong with it, I can pretty much diagnose it, and I know people weren't going to take advantage of me. If you buy a newer car, there's less likely for things to happen to it, and you're like, I'm just tired of not being able to be comfortable and have that peace of mind to get from A to B. So for me, it was a little bit easier to say, and one of the things that I also did is I was one of the persons who were big on, buying a car and having car payments and having that really nice car and just be okay with if it's $300 a month, $300 a month. And then I thought to myself, well, what if I save that money, save the $300 or $400 a month and put it away, saved and invested it, and continued to do that over time? What would that look like? That was initially my vision. But then once you start seeing the money accumulate,
Okay.
that's what gets you motivated. And what happens is, you've saved that money. Let's say if you've saved over 6 or 7 years, you have now $20,000 in the bank. So now your approach to buying a car is a little bit different, because you have that money that you've saved, and you say, well, if I just spend $7,500 on this car over here, as opposed to getting a car with a payment, I can continue to save what I've been saving, and I'm still driving a decent car, a car good enough to get me around, a car that I can feel is dependable enough to be okay, your routine maintenance, and you still have that $1,200 in the bank, $12,500, that if something happens, you'll be okay. But that was kind of my approach to it.
Have
Back
you
then.
have you
It's worked.
always been that way, or is that something that that's a lesson learned that you're reapplying?
That's a lesson learned, because I went through my whole. I got a car payment when I was like 19 years old, right? And I was making decent money, but my car payment was like $200 and some a month, and I that happened and stayed that way until I was probably 32, 33, something like that. And so for those years, and it was debt has a way of kind of saddling you a little bit. You feel like you got to pay these people. You got to pay these people every month. You got to pay. You got to pay. You got to pay.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel comfortable with that. I felt better when I didn't have to pay people, and when I could feel like I was paying myself instead.
Okay. Any parting words before we end this interview and then put me in the hot seat and you as the interviewer?
No, thank you very much. I really appreciate your candid questions. No, we're good to go. I really appreciate you.